Welcome to the Tales of a Red Clay Rambler podcast, featuring interviews with culture makers from around the world. This is Ben Carter. I'm going to be your host. If you'd like more information on the show, please visit our website, talesofaredclayrambler.com. Welcome back to episode 389 of the podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. Today on the show, I have a tribute episode for Michael Symon, who passed away earlier this week. This is a re-airing of our 2014 interview where we talked about intuition, the influence of Michael's teacher Warren Mackenzie, and how Mackenzie's influence set Michael on a path of finding truth in the pursuit of pottery. After studying at the University of Minnesota in the late 1960s, Michael set up a studio in Athens, Georgia, where he made pots for more than 30 years. If you'd like to see examples of his work, you can check out the book Michael Symon Evolution, which features many of Michael's favorite pots that he made from 1980 onward. I want to wish his wife the best and send my condolences. He was an amazing maker and a wonderful person to sit down and talk with about his ideas about the meaning behind making. Without further ado, we'll get to the interview. Well, after talking to your wife, I had questions prepared, but I think I'm going to throw those out and let's start talking about intuition, because this is something that is obviously important in your work and that you and her have talked a lot about. So how do you think making work drives the mind to have new ideas?
Yes, I don't know how. I have no idea how, but I know that I just know that it happens. The difference between oh, golly. I mean, the difference between trying to get ready to work, it was really plain in the first few years I was working, because I was, I had come to Georgia and I was making pottery, or had everything set up to make pottery. I had my pottery wheel, and I had the clay, and I had a place to work, and I had, and I felt like this is what I wanted. This was what I was going to do. I was going to be a potter. I was a potter. But I wasn't quite a potter yet. I had too many questions. I didn't know what to do with the whole day. I could make a few pots. I didn't have enough pots in my repertoire to go very far. I used them up too quickly. And I felt like I just didn't have any range. I didn't know what to do. And then I always had the questions of, well, is this a good pot? Should I be making this pot? It doesn't seem right. And it was an impossible question. These things would drive me wild. And I felt all of a sudden like God, maybe I really can't do this. I don't know.
Almost like a sense of doubt creeping in.
Yeah. The doubt because it was, I didn't think a potter would be in that situation of having to figure out what they were going to make. A potter makes his pots. Well, it became clear. A couple of things eased my mind. For one thing, I started to see pots of my legends like Hamada and Leech. I started to see pots of theirs that I didn't think were very nice pots, particularly. I didn't like some pots. Right. I realized that they made bad pots too. I hate to say that's a beautiful thing to find out. It freed me up. It was very good because it meant that, well, you didn't have to, you didn't have to make the best pot every time you made a pot. You did have to, but you couldn't. It was just beyond human capability to do it. So that helps you relax a little bit. But at the same time, it helps you, it encourages you to look at what you're doing. Always. And to see all the pots that you want to make, want that you can see, I think. I mean, I think I felt like I didn't have enough stimulus sometimes. So consequently, I was just driven to go look at all the pots I could find. Museums, magazines, everywhere. Look them over. Look at them.
Yeah.
See what you liked. See what moved you.
Yeah, let's talk about that sense of an object moving you, because that's something that artists are very attuned to. That a three-dimensional object, an inanimate object, can actually be a really powerful emotional tool.
Yes.
So let's talk about that, because that's something that's hard to put into words, but I have a feeling that you have thought and talked about this a lot.
Well, I suppose I have, but let me see. How did I ever get started doing it? And that would be a good place to explain from. I remember last spring, the people that teach at the university here, Ted Soppe and Sanguya, invited me to come and speak to the students, and it was when I thought I was beginning to work a little bit. So I went there one day, and Sangu asked me a question shortly after I started. He said, "How did you decide what was a good pot?" And that made me do the same thing. I laughed. I just laughed. I had to laugh. Because it's such a big question. I mean,
it is the question,
right? To start out with these students, and I kind of wanted to have answers, but that's just too big a question. I don't know if that was a big question. I laughed and I deferred. And I never really did. So many people came that day and talked, and I never really did get to answer Sangu his question. What is a good pot? Wow, gee, first that was an early question, and it went on for quite a while. But you start to have clues of what is your good pot, or what is the pot that you want to make, what fits into your fits your rules, fits your parameters of what's, I don't know. It's not, and by that time you know these things, you know that it's not, there's not a right way to do it. But you have to have a concrete way. I mean, you have to have a way that is really where you can say this and not that, or always. And I remember finding, there were a lot of little truths that popped up as time went by. One of them was that if you had two pots and you put them on the table beside each other, one of them always was more yours, was more you, was more complete, was more the pot you wanted. That would always lead you on then. I mean, then and then you could say to yourself, I said to myself, what is it? What is here that I feel closer to? So then you'd take your answer. I mean, it was an answer that was sitting there right in front of you. And you could say which one was better, rather than saying the whole of the whole world or of all the shapes possible.
You had to make the parameters small enough that...
Yeah, you made it so you could answer the question.
And do you think that was based on your emotion on that day and time? Or do you think that
sure.
there is...
I suppose to a certain extent, but there's got to be some faith in your learning ability, or your digestion of the feeling of it. You learn things. I mean, you're just learning as you're going on, one pot to the next, I think.
And so as you were starting off, you had been in Minnesota with Warren Mackenzie. Did you guys talk about this idea of intuition and the good pot?
I think not.
So it was really that there were skills being imparted, and then you guys as a community were talking about this, like your fellow students, but not necessarily with Warren.
Yes, but I wonder how much there was even when we were students. I mean, even amongst the students. I remember, well, this is not answer that question exactly, but I remember that When I was in undergraduate school, I married a woman named Sandra Simon, and Sandra made pottery. We both made pottery. We were both some of that group of students, which was really good. I mean, part of the power of the time was how enthusiastic this group was. I mean, we really felt like we were going to save the world. I think, it was like the truth about that was coming out of the pots seemed so big, seemed really to be, and it was just just the right thing for us, I think.
And this would have been the late 60s.
This was the late 60s, 69. Yeah, because I left there in 70. 68, 69, 70, yeah. Mark Ferris was there. Wayne Branham was there. They were like cohorts. They were kind of like mischievous. They were both really into it, and they were both very good. They were both very good potters. I mean, they had a good sense about making things. I think I looked at them, really they were powerful to me. I looked at what they were doing, and they were making really interesting work even way back then, right from the first year that we were students, it seems like. And Sandra was there, and Randy Johnson was there, but there were also 4 or 5 other students who were very good potters, I thought, who didn't make pottery, who did something else.
Yeah, went on to do something else in their life.
Yes, probably are still interested, I would think, in making pottery, because I think it was a powerful time for all of us.
Do you think that was the times in terms of the 60s, or do you think it's those special ingredients? Because every person brings something special to a group that's hard to quantify, but when you see the group together, there's something flourishing there that's not flourishing in other groups. So do you feel like it was
I definitely had that feeling that we were lucky, that things were there was a gelling there. And I remember being frustrated. Sandra and I we were working together. We were frustrated that the world wasn't developing pottery when we moved away from there and started off on our own and went out in the world with our pots. And we were disappointed that we weren't making the communication that we thought we expected to make. So that's true. That's really true.
How much did your relationship with her affect your ability to question your own intuition? Like, did you guys talk a lot back and forth in a similar way that...
We had a good working relationship. Yeah. We talked a lot about pots. And we had a good, sympathetic, value system. I think that's how you'd say it. We tended to like, similar things.
Because I'm interested. I talked to my fiance as a historian. She's not a potter, but there's something about sharing and trying to put into words things that are intangible.
Yeah.
It's really valuable. And if you have one person that you do that with over and over and over again, they end up seeing your blind spots. They see those spots that are just in the back of your head that you can't put your finger on.
Yeah.
And it was so great upstairs to see you talking with Susan about intuition, because you guys, obviously, this has been an ongoing conversation for probably years.
Yeah, it's really crucial. It's very important.
So as you developed as a maker, I'm looking at some pots back here on the wall, and your forms are so strong in their geometry. But when you were developing a form, did you develop the pot first and then the surface decoration, or did you often...
Always. Yeah, that's always true. Did I declare? I don't know if I only declared this in my mind, because I suppose there was always an urge to do the surface, to work on the surface. But I will always swear that the elements of proportioning and the clay wall and the structural elements were crucial. Always. And the most interesting, really, to me too, the most compelling.
Did that come from architecture? Were you looking at architecture?
Well, I think, I say to myself that when I went to school, thought I would be an architect. I mean, it was the most I thought I had an idea of a career path. but I wasn't really a very good student, and I wasn't really very deeply involved in architecture. It was just that I kind of liked the idea of it, of building. And I suppose I was fond of looking at buildings, but I wasn't a student of architecture ever. I was stopped by math, by calculus and big math.
I never got there.
Big math. I just wasn't, I wasn't enough of a student. I wasn't to get it.
And it's interesting that we were talking about intuition relating to structure, because architecture is so much about the mind and trying to determine the human body in the space that's around you. But it's mind first. It's drawing, it's thinking. But clay is so immediate.
Yeah, it was a relief. It was a relief that it was immediate, I think, that I could actually do it all right there quickly. I mean, the speed wasn't important, but I could do it all myself. That was very good.
Yeah, I think that's the hard thing about architecture is that as an architect, you're usually not the builder. So you are completely giving control of the realization of the idea to someone else. And one of the things that I love about your pots is that there's an intimacy and touch that's present. The connection between your hand and that object is very direct. Whether it's the line that's trimmed on the bottom or the speed at which your wheel throws and the way you pull up.
That's nice that you say that, but don't you think, do you really think I don't think that's so singular. I think a lot, that's just something that happens in pots that are communicating. That's what they should do. That's what it should happen, I think.
I think many people in my generation, though, feel a need to cover them up. And not just my generation. You can look back through ceramic history and the touch of the potter has been taken out intentionally, whether it's through slip casting or whether it's through even just spinning the wheel faster.
No, I know that. I know you're right about the wheel. This wheel says a lot. Really does say a lot. And if you see Warren throwing, up with it on his wheel, man, it's so he just about becomes that wheel when he's sitting on it. It's have you seen the last film that they did of Warren?
I'm not sure. Which one was
Well,
that?
I don't know. There's so many of them. There's so many little bits of film, but he's just throwing. He's throwing this really wet clay, and he's talking, and it's, and the shape is going up, and it all seems so, I don't know. It's so much a part of the world. It's so loose and open.
Do you think of yourself when you were making, say, a simple form like a Eunomi? Well, not that that's simple, but making a form that's smaller versus a form like a square box. There's a difference in simplicity there.
Yeah.
How do you think differently about design based on that?
Oh, the Eunomi. See, I always had the idea that I should be I had the idea from Warren, but it was also trying to figure out, looking at the Hamada pots and trying to figure out what was, and then also figuring out, being somewhat influenced by the Jugtown people and the early American potters who were making shapes, but not not such rigid shape, not like they were when they started to be jiggered in factories. Peasant. It was trying to find the peasant way of working, something that was not. I don't know say how not. It was just. For a while I called this group pots that I made in the late 70s, maybe a long time ago, country crockery. I was kind of aiming myself towards making country crockery, which included leaving kind of a heavier rim. Oh, I don't know what else. Simpler surfaces, pretty simple surfaces.
So tell me about how you approach something being overworked or being underworked. So like as you're working, there's a point at which you're like, this is done. But your done might be different than my done. And I think that's often the rub
my friend, Andy Nassis, who used to teach here. Do you know Andy?
I don't know him, but I know of him. Mm-hmm.
Andy said that the thing about my pots was that I stopped before anybody else would. It was something like that anyway. He said I would leave things. I remember a student coming up to me in a workshop in San Antonio and saying to me, "You mean you leave them like that?" Which I thought was a riot. And I proudly said, well, yes, this is the clay. This is what the clay looks like to me. And Warren suggested a lot of stuff, about making the clay, being proud of the clay, and not being embarrassed about what the clay does when you work on it in this way, and trying to make it, find ways of working that make the clay proud of being clay. That seemed important.
Did you have a sense when you were working with him that he was important? Like, did you feel like what he said you were really listening to?
Well, it was just important to me. I mean, and I think to us, but he had been working there at the university for, at that point, 15 or 16 years. And no one knew about him that we knew of. I didn't know enough of the people out in the world to ask them, what do you think of this man? He was just really big. And it's funny to me now because I was probably 20 years old when I was there, 19 or 20. And I always thought of him as so old. And he was about 42, oh, right. When I was there as a student. Quite young. Now he's 90, and he's still making whole kilos of pots. It's flabbergasting, man.
It's amazing, that energy. I had read in the interview you did with Mark Shapiro, which is a fantastic interview, the Smithsonian interview, that you felt, this was in 2005, that you felt like you could still hear Warren's voice in your head.
Oh, it's true.
Do you still feel like that?
Yeah, it's true. Sure.
What do you think how did he tap into your core so much as an artist?
Well, I don't know what made it seem so much more important to me. I don't know if I should say more important, but I just felt like I could do it. I felt like I connected to it. He always wanted to go to work. I mean, I guess that was part of it. There was no doubt about it that he needed to make those next pots. He did what he could. The other instructors there at the art school wanted to stay at school and talk about working. Warren went out to his studio every single day and made his pots. I thought, has he made them enough? Even at that point, I said, I thought that. When I was just trying to understand that, it seemed so flabbergasting to me that he was still finding out every day from his pots about what he was doing. He was finding out about himself.
And so do you think that the process of working is a process of self-discovery as you as an individual, or do you think that it's a process of aesthetic discovery as an object?
Both those things happen. Both those things are happening. Yeah, definitely. And it ends up that there's not so much difference really in the two things.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. That our aesthetic, what leads us aesthetically is ultimately what is leading us internally to discover ourselves, or maybe to be more comfortable with ourselves is maybe a better way to say it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I really haven't had that thought before you asked that.
Because what that also implies is that as we age as makers, that the pots we're making farther down the road are automatically more of who we are.
Yeah, I know. I see that. I see that in it. And then I can say for myself, but see, I didn't get to. I was forced to stop making pretty soon, too early, frankly. I mean, maybe I'm not done making yet, but I'm done making like I did for a while, which was every day and every day. And I thought new. I really felt like I was those years in the night, at that last studio, 10 years we were there, Susan and I. And I just thought, always, every kiload I was getting pots out that I thought were really pretty interesting pots. I mean, pots that I didn't plan them. I couldn't have planned them before the kiload started. But by the time the kiload was finished, I had made some of these pots that were, I like to say they were better, but they were more complete anyway. They were, and and the whole process was working so well. Then there was no struggle. I didn't feel like I was pushing up against it all day long. It was really receiving me into like a little club of pottery making, and the kilns were interesting to look at every time. I could go and look at those pots when they came out of the kiln, and I did. It was important, and I saw and see what would happen, and then make the next kiload. And it was a prosperous time.
When you first realized that you were going to have to slow down making pots, this was 2004 or 2005?
2004.
And you started to get sick. Is that something that you felt like, okay, even though I'm sick now, I'm going to get better and I'm going to make again, because that drive had been so strong your whole life?
No, but I had a couple of things that I thought I really wanted to continue on, that I'm making. I had just, it was a rim of a bowl that I remember that I really thought was going to help me out with my plates and bowls, and even maybe my cups, but especially the plates and bowls. And it was a pretty distinct thing in my mind. It started with a thought, but then it matured into a few good pots, a few pots that were good examples of that rim. And it was a rim that was, it was Etruscan rim kind of. It was that looked almost metallic. And it wasn't so much different from other rims that I had made, but it was just a little deeper carrying on of the same thing. So I hated not to be able to keep working on that thing. I knew it was going to lead to, another, who knows, a whole bunch of pots that might have been satisfying. So that was disappointing. I was just in a really, I had a good momentum right then. And it was difficult. I liked being carried with that. Momentum is so important, and I liked being carried in that stream of whatever that is, making. So that was difficult to give that up. It wasn't, let's see, I don't know my feeling. Well, I was getting my pots out in the world more and more. More people were paying attention to me, and I hated to stop that too. I liked the attention, and it was nice to have people looking at the work.
I feel like when you're working in the studio as an artist, it's very personal, and it's very much about intuition. It's about going inward and having your reflection on the material, whatever that is, whether it's clay or paint or whatever. But then when you put it out into the world and those pots go to the gallery, for all intents and purposes, that's the end of your control over that environment. So how does that change when those pots get away from you?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't remember so much anymore. One thing that's happened in the last two shows I've had, which have been a long ways apart, but they're similar to me in that I had some of the pots were the same pots. But nothing was for sale. I thought that was interesting. Oh, right. See, this is the first time in my whole life of making that the work I put out before the public wasn't for sale. Well, that encourages a couple things. It encourages a newfound truthfulness that isn't encumbered by the need to do business. That's nice. That's a very nice thing. I like that. I liked it very much. I mean, I had a great time both those days. The opening up in Minneapolis and I visited the museum here 10 or 12 times, I suppose, and always always a little group of people gathered, and I was able to speak about the pots that, and the things that I was concerned with when I was working on this particular pot or that particular pot, or how one pot led to another, and those kind of stories that are, I think, the essential part of what a potter does in their essential part of what I did in my pottery life, anyway. And I think it's the same with other people's pots, but I'm not sure it's true for everyone. Yeah, I think it is. Maybe a little bits of it are truth. Anyway, that was very nice. So that was different than when I was sending pots away to galleries that would have a few good pots that I picked out then that were actually, I picked them out. They were good pots. And usually if I would send them away, I don't know, somehow, it just, the communication wasn't the same, wasn't as rich. I didn't think. It really helps to have a gallery and a gallery owner or an agent who understands what your value is, then they can represent you somewhat. And that's very nice. It can't be beat, really. But it's nice to be able to talk to people who are actually using your pots in their house or living around them. It's priceless. I thought. I really liked it. I liked it. I think to myself that I like it more than I should, but I did. It was very satisfying those times of doing it.
And why do you think you liked it more than you should?
Oh, just because it's so, it's sort of pompous. I mean, in doing so, I'm making my work, very important. And, I'm really doing it. Really, the work is done for myself. I mean, it's great to be, understood or appreciated by other people. But, basically I've got to like my pots.
Because I think that's something that artists struggle with is the need for acceptance. Because the only way we accurately know we're communicating is if we see the look of recognition in someone's eye. Because very rarely do people communicate with words like, oh yeah, I understand the idea you're making in this pot. Yeah. But you can watch someone in a gallery when they look at something and they get it. Yeah. And it's super satisfying.
Yes. Yeah, it is.
And I don't think that's pompous. I think that's communication.
Well, the thing of it is that, just not to have, well, I don't know. I guess I just know that other people aren't I feel very lucky to be in this situation, that I have found people and I have had people come to me and look at the work I do and like it, appreciate it. And I know that a lot of people don't have that, don't ever find it in their lives, even though their work is similar and certainly their value, their heart is in it as deeply as mine is. But for some reason I'm lucky enough. I'm like the conduit that's been able to take it out a little bit further and get a little bit more, help a few more people understand what the pottery making world is.
So when you had those shows, especially the one that was here in town, and it was not about sales. You were going to keep all those pots, or at least the people that owned them were going to keep them if they were on loan.
No, actually, I own them all.
What was your experience as a maker to go into a public place and see all of this work? Because this is the work that we're sitting in now. It's more than 20. How many years did you say you'd been collecting it?
Yeah, since I'd say late 70s. So it was 20 and then a few more, 26, 27 years. And that means there were about eight years where I didn't keep a pot in the first 8 years that I was working.
Because you needed the money?
That was a pity too. Well, because I needed the money, yeah, but it was also seemed important that I sell the good, the pots that came out that I liked, the top, what would you say, 10%, 20%, I wanted other people to see them. I wanted to make sure other people saw them. So if I had a chance to send them anywhere, I would just send the best pots. I would just send the best pots. And then, later on, I might not do that. Later, in fact, I made myself in about 1982, I think. It was 12 years after starting. I realized I didn't have any good pots of mine. And I said that I just decided out of every kill, before anything else is decided, I was going to take one pot. And I started to do that. I really did it. It's an amazing thing to think about now, because it's not the kind of thing that I would ordinarily do. Yeah. But I came about it because there were a few good pots from back in that early time. And for my case, it was the early 70s. And some of them there were a few good ones. There were a few that I liked, and I couldn't remember them. I couldn't remember them clearly. I wanted to go back and revisit some of them in my making. And I didn't remember what they were like, really. And I thought, this was really a pity. I'm not going to be able to develop these things if I don't even know don't even remember them anymore, So it seemed crucial to keep some. And to keep some, as the time was going by and the kills were coming out, I thought, well, I haven't kept a picture for a year now, and I should keep one, just as I know what they look like at this time. Because I thought that would be a way that I could keep them going. I always said to myself, well, I thought, in those early years, I thought of Hamada and Leach making pottery for 4 years, and Warren too, then making pottery for 4 years. And I thought, God, 4 years, I've been making pots for 5 years now. Thinking that I was really deep into it, And, I said to myself, well, God, if I make pots for 40 years, I could make some really good ones. And that helped me take it seriously. I mean, it really did. It seems silly, I guess, but it's true. It was nice. It was a good thought.
Well, as you're saying this, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, I've been making pots for about 15 years, a little bit more. And in my head, I'm thinking, I don't keep pots because they're not me enough. Yeah. Kind of like what you said is that the voice that I have that's specifically mine is still a whisper. It's not a clear...
That's a good way to say it, Ben. Yeah, I know. I think it's true. But the other thing you said, I don't think I ever answered that question. And it was a good question, because it's about, do you think you just keep getting better and better and better and better? If you keep learning more and keep getting that feeling, your tactile stuff becomes more and more attuned. Shouldn't it get better? But, I don't think that happens. I mean, there's a point. Well, yeah, I suppose you don't know. I suppose you don't know when it happens. I mean, because in fact, if you looked at the whole a kilo of pots of Warren's coming out now, there'd be some extremely good pots. There'd be some extremely good pots, and the same thing was true of Ron, my good pottery friend from here. Things are boiling down in there somehow, and I don't know if maybe. But I know it's not a straight line. It's never a straight line. It's never linear.
It's like that.
Yeah. You just don't get to say, well, I'm going to make a good one today. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.
And I think that's interesting, the role of judgment. Judgment as makers when we're in the studio and we're saying good and bad. Because it kind of goes, it's sort of the next part of intuition. You have the initial drive, and then you make the object. And then at that point, you can choose to judge it or not judge it. But I've found that I'm not capable, even after it's finished, I'm often not capable of seeing the really good pots. I think it's other people that are responsible for judging those. And I think I've had friends that have really doomed their careers by thinking too much about the good pots, as opposed to just making pots and continuing to make pots and trusting that whatever they're making is going to lead to something better.
Yeah. I think you can do that. I think he can do that, but it's not automatic. All I can say is that. I mean, I still have hope for myself, Ben. Frankly, I mean, I know that, I've made these little cups I made this last spring, and they came out, they just flowed out of throwing. I mean, it's very much fun, just really very much fun. And there are little things about them that tell me that one of the best cups I ever made could still come out of the kiln.
That is a beautiful thought.
It is. It's a lovely thought.
And I have that hope for you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
I know as a maker that it's hard to have the studio and it's hard to have the pots around and not be able to get in here every day.
I just don't know what to do. I had for a while, I keep going back to these 10 years at Smithsonian at my last studio, but it was such a good time. I just had so many things were working so well. And growing out, I remember the earlier years, and it was a very difficult struggle to get enough of the things to fortify myself, to feel like really just let's go on, in those later years, it was just always, it seems to me now that it was always exciting. I mean, it was a little bit the work as the pots became more desired, as I was more valued, it became more difficult because I'd never felt like I had enough pots. It was like Ron and I had that studio sale, and then the studio sale, all of a sudden, becomes very, chic. It was chic. I mean, people wanted to be there. It was a happening. And then, about instantly, we both found that we couldn't make enough pots anymore, and it became a pain in the neck.
And I've been talking to Ron about that because I saw a video that George Macaulay made about Ron.
Yeah.
And there's a little clip of those shows.
There's a little clip of the last sale, I think.
Running in the door, literally running in the door, grabbing pots. And what was interesting is that they grabbed any pot and then they would buy them. And then afterwards they would trade them between each other.
That's
true.
And
that's an interesting, because that talks about pots as commodity, not about truth.
It was all wrong. It was all wrong, really. I mean, it made us, we both felt, well, I mean, in a way you feel encouraged because these people are giving you a little bit of love, but, and admiration. But the feeling for you inside your studio with your pots is just not right. There should be some, you want to have some reflective time, I mean, you've put in all this stuff. I felt as though I was getting out into my pots some feeling about life, or some truth was exhibited. And this little brief moment of salesmanship did not satisfy, did not make a balance there. It did not equate.
Let's talk about Ron, because I know you guys have been friends for a long time and had those sales together. And what is it like to have these really long-term friendships with someone that art is the main core?
It's lovely, I mean, it's just lovely. But the thing with Ron, let's see now. We've always had, I mean, it's been very distinct. We are two people, and we were never coupled in our working,
Oh, right. Very different aesthetic.
Very distinct. And the aesthetic's different too. The beauty of Ron is a lot. The beauty of Warren is just like there's nothing else you can do but do the work. I mean, he just goes in the studio and keeps making them.
Over and over.
Bless his heart. Bless his heart. I mean, I remember when he retired from school, both of them, when they retired from teaching, I thought, well, why don't you just quit now? You don't have to think about it. Help us with your thinking. But now I realize that was silly. I mean, I'm so happy that they're both making stuff. and they're both making really good work. You know?
If you never make another pot again, do you feel like that your thoughts about them, like our conversation right now, that will be good enough to satisfy you, that you're contributing to the art world, to the clay world?
It would be good enough for what? For me, I mean, down in my heart, I suppose not, but it's, I know I did get somewhere. I mean, I will tell you that the development, more than any one pot, the development of all those years of working is crucial, more important thing. And that I perceive that it did happen is pretty satisfying. And whether I say, whether I can make, 10 more good cups or make a cup that, breaks your heart, I don't know if I need to do that. I mean, it's pretty satisfying to look back. Really. I mean, I can't say that I regret that. This is just so it's not the way that my working life ended. I wouldn't say we'll say it right now, we'll say has slowed. It's not the way that I would want it to do, but, and I had more to say. I swear I had more to say.
I believe you.
And so that's regrettable not, but I don't know if anybody feels finished. It's obvious. I mean, Warren says, oh, I've got my kill. I'm ready to load my kill, and I think it's going to be the best one.
That's fantastic.
It's just, it's great. I think it's great.
Because see, I can tell you as a fan of your work that if you made that piece last week and it came out of the kiln last week, or if it came out 15 years ago, it doesn't matter to me because I'm still so excited about that pot. And that's the difference between being on the inside of the making process where you are and being on the outside.
Yeah. That's good.
And I think that's the interesting thing about having a retrospective, like having a museum show, is it kind of implies that something is complete because of the way that they arranged the show.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that. I mean, It just means you have pots in a show. It's just a building.
That's true.
But there's some like finality to that, which I've always thought to be odd.
It is odd. It's very odd. It doesn't have to be stated. I mean, it just doesn't have to be thought of that way.
So do you still talk to Warren?
Well, yeah, but not I haven't spoken to him much lately. I mean, let's see. I haven't spoken to him for quite a while now. He was the person really who helped me see that this was a collection of pots that were valuable to people, that other people could understand, that they demonstrated the evolution of a potter's life. He said it's too important. People should see it. So that was very good. It was heartbreaking, really. It was the best thing that happened with Warren and with our student-teacher relationship.
Yeah, what an honor for him to say that.
Oh, I know. It's true. And he was moved. He looked at them for a long time.
Did he come down?
He was here. He did an exhibition at the Signature in Atlanta, and then he did a workshop at Nancy Green's. You haven't met Nancy Green?
I have not.
You should meet her while you're here. She was a really enthusiastic. She was a veterinarian, and then became a very enthusiastic pottery student, and now is a potter. I don't know. She sponsors workshops out of her studio. She does things that no other potters around here do, and it's nice. I think she makes a nice little community. She's important to me, and I think she's important to everybody, really.
So what do you think about the future of these pots that we're sitting around? What do you want them
What am I going to do with them?
Yeah.
Oh, boy, I don't know the answer here, but I'll give you some answers. One thing is that I could sell them. I mean, people want those pots. I could sell them. I could probably sell all of them fairly quickly. But I think that they're worth more than that. I mean, I don't know. This makes me a little squeamish because I don't know if I'd like to hear other people say this, but I think that they're worth a lot of money as a phenomena, as a lifelong group of work, and one thing leading to the next, and all the parts of it picked by the person who made them. I think that's very unusual. So I think that they have value in that way, and I think it's a sort of extraordinary value. So if I found someone who appreciated it in the same way and had a lot of dough, I would sell them. I would sell them as a hunk, and that would take care of them, look after them, and so that's kind of the whole development of my line of thinking about them. I'd like to have them be in a good place where people could see them, who knew what they were looking at, and could see the development, could see how one pot led to another, how they could see how a potter's work develops. I think that's important about them. But I don't know that I can do much about that. I'm going to do what I can about cataloging them, and I'm going to make it clear. I'm going to try to get it out in the world that I have this collection of pots, and that I would like to see them be kept pretty much together. I mean, when I say that, I think there's 3 or 4 groups that would carry the whole story. There's 415 pots here, Ben. So it's a lot of pots.
Yeah.
And it probably doesn't need that. I think the shows that I've had, the 2 shows, they were about roughly 100 pots, a little bit less than 100 pots. Well, actually, the one in Minneapolis was a little more, and here a little bit less. But I thought they told the story kind of. At least you get an idea of how some things came from here and went to there anyway.
It's interesting. I feel like you're a very humble person, but you often, when you're talking about selling things as a whole, you said it makes you squeamish, that it's almost strange to think about being proud that this is your life's work. But from the outside, you're one of the most important potters that I've ever heard of or known.
Well, I've got my own heroes. Right. And, I don't think, I don't know what to say. I mean, I still think, like a Hamada pot. I want a nice Hamada pot. I mean, I really do want it. I want to own it. I want to have it and see it and look at it and have it.
But I think the thing that I'm getting at is, can you accept the admiration of others? Because a lot of people, when they knew I was coming to Athens, they asked me, "Oh, are you going to talk to Michael? He's my favorite potter." And I tell you, I probably had 10 people tell me that.
That's just amazing to me, Ben.
So how does it feel to be a leader, whether you set out to be a leader or whether you even feel like one now? Knowing that, how do you reckon that as a maker, that you've now become a leader in our field?
I don't know. I guess I haven't ever thought about it like that before. I can feel myself being a leader in this community. Yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, people take it for granted that that I know about pottery here. I mean, I've gotten that much foundation. I mean, I'm trustable.
Okay. You're a known quantity.
I'm not a fool. I'm not kidding when I say I'm a potter. When I was young, I remember going to art fairs and people would say, "Well, where did you find this?" That kind of thing. How can you answer that? Oh God. So it's all relative, is what I'm saying. I guess. In my mind, there are a lot of important potters in this country right now. A lot of people who are making, extremely good pots, and people who are just making breakthroughs with their pottery, I think. So it's so good to see. And I feel like I feel like I'm a part of it in a way, but I'm just a part.
The wonderful thing about the ceramics community is that when you're a part of it, it's a very intimate community. Like,
oh, it's lovely, man.
The number of people that have worked on your level of ceramics, and I'm talking about like a life dedicated to a craft, is so few. It's in some way, it's good that it's a small community because you can meet all of the other people. But in other ways, it's really good to acknowledge how special that is. That when you devote your life to a craft or to anything, any passion, music, anything, that there's something really special that comes out of a life. It really shows what we can do as human beings. I mean, when I see this collection, what it makes me feel like is hope. It makes me feel very hopeful.
That's great. That's really nice, Ben. Oh, boy.
So is there any other topic that you'd like to talk about?
Let's see. I want to tell all the potters to take care of themselves. It was shocking to not be able to work, to have your health not be good enough to work. And it happened too quickly. I wish I had just a couple more kilos.
Sure. Just a few more.
I could have worked out that thing and that thing. No, but on the other hand, it's like I said, I really do mean it. I was very lucky. I got to some places that I really wanted to get to, and it was, it's very good, very satisfying thing to do. I think pots are very important, and I don't think that the world quite understands, or that the culture quite understands how much that pots can do for them. They let them do it. We needed kind of a taller pedestal to stand on and shout it out.
Well, thank you very much for doing this interview. I really appreciate it, and I wish you the best.
Thank you, Ben.
If you'd like more information on the artists on the show, or if you'd like more information about the workshops and events that I'll be having in the next couple months, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Carter Pottery. Another great way to support the show is to leave me a comment on iTunes. To do that, search Tales of a Red Clay Rambler under iTunes Podcasts, and you'll find a page that's linked to our show. Thank you guys for the support.